mark Nigeria's centenary, President Goodluck Jonathan hosted several heads of state and government at an international conference on human security, peace and development. This week's edition of the program reviews the outcome of that conference. Hello, welcome to the program. I am Omelogo Nnadi. Nigeria's centenary celebration provided an opportunity for African leaders and indeed the rest of the world to discuss the security challenges of the continent, especially Nigeria. I spoke to one of those behind the ideas of the conference. But first, let's listen to a report that gives an insight into the international conference. There was no pomp and pageantry. This conference to celebrate Nigeria's 100 years of existence brought together over 30 presidents and heads of government from around the globe and captains of international organizations to rejoice with Nigeria and talk real challenging issues for the country in Africa: security, peace and development. President Goodluck Jonathan, who welcomed the heads of states to Nigeria, said this is time to look back with gratitude and forward with hope and confidence.
Today, as our nation marks its first 100 years, we look back with gratitude to God and with pride in our citizens. We look forward also to the future with hope and confidence. In this hall and beyond, I am delighted to welcome many of our past, current and future leaders, as well as our friends and partners from near and far, persons and nations that have stood with us in times past, and whose friendship we will continue to cherish.
Security and terrorism took center stage at this conference, a matter President Jonathan said collaborative work among governments is necessary so that all perpetrators of acts of terrorism, Boko Haram at the head, are rounded up and made to face justice.
This gruesome and mindless act of savagery is not Nigerian. It is not African. Let me assure all Nigerians that we will spare no resource in bringing those murderers to justice. It is now time that we agree as African leaders that acts of terror against one nation is an act of terror against all nations.
President Jonathan's call with the recent massacre in Borno, Yobe State, a case in point, elicited both condemnations and offers for support from other world leaders.
As a mother and a grandmother, I received the news of our innocent children in Nigeria burned while they peacefully slept with shock. I mourn with the families for their loss. It is our sincere desire that the political differences and violent conflict besetting some parts of Nigerian society will be resolved amicably for the common good of the people of Nigeria.
I assure you, President, that your struggle is also our struggle, and we will always stand ready to provide not only our political support, but our support and help every time you need it, because the struggle against terrorism is also the struggle for democracy.
So many issues have been raised on security, peace and development at this occasion of Nigeria's centenary celebrations, points Nigeria must note going forward. And after today's conference and other activities lined up for the anniversary, many Nigerians will look forward to decisive action and the much-needed impact to stamp out the menace of terrorism and stop the ongoing massacre of innocents, especially in northern Nigeria. Joining me now is the Senior Special Assistant to the President, Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Research and Documentation, Mr. Ferdinand Agu. Now, what can Nigeria take away from that conference?
Well, first of all, I think it might be useful to get the setting of the conference. The conference was called Conference on Human Security, okay, Peace and International and Development, an agenda for the 21st century.
Okay.
So the origin was that our president reflected that the moment of our centenary will be the appropriate time both to look back at the challenges and trials we've had in the past and the opportunities we have today.
Yes.
And ask himself and ask our nation and ask our continent, where should we be going to? And in his mind, one of the most critical issues that we should fix our mind on as a nation and as a continent is human security. Human security has a nexus, a linkage with peace and development.
Sure.
Human security deals with man as a unit in society. For many years, African governments have been concerned about regime security, about military security. But our president felt that those are important, territorial security, regime security, military security, but that the most impactful, the most meaningful eventually is going to be the security of the human being. His physical security, his emotional security, his freedom from want, his freedom from his access to education, food security, communal security, all ramifications to security of man as a unit in society. And he felt that if we can set an agenda that Nigerians can buy into, that Africans can buy into, today and in the years to come, then we can have states that are apportioning their resources more to the needs of man as a unit in society than to all these instruments and implements of war and state apparatus that, although they are important, they don't often impact positively on the lives of human beings. Now, what he then did was to invite his brother and sister African heads of states for a summit in Abuja. Out of the usual international summit, you could have done this in an OAE forum, but this is purely a Nigerian agenda. And he said he wants to test it with his colleagues and see whether they can develop a framework that they can use and bring it back to the larger international society to keep it on their agenda. So if you ask, what can we take away from it? Your first takeaway is this, that we have at the head of our national leadership a president that is deeply concerned not just about the integrity and security of states, but the security of the individual. It's extremely important at a time like this when, unfortunately, part of our country is under threats and a lot of our citizens still suffer from the callous actions of terrorists. The next thing is this. When we can internalize it as part of our national agenda and continental agenda in the years to come, it puts us on a more sustainable path of development. So in terms of takeaway, it is agenda setting, it is consensus building, and it's a pointer to the future. It's a good beginning, and then we all have to work on it, not just for today, but for years to come.
Okay, that's while we keep that in the cooler. At this conference yesterday also, Nigeria received some level of international support to combat terrorism. That's the fallout of what you just mentioned that the president wanted to present. Okay, but I dare say that we've had such promises made in the past. So what is going to be different this time?
Were you at the conference?
Yes, I was at the conference.
Okay. Actually, my first takeaway from that conference, I'll get to your question. It's not just the promise of support we received on terror, but the effusive remarks that leaders on their own made about Nigeria, made about our people, made about our government, and made about our president. You could see they were heartfelt. In fact, one of the leaders said that Nigeria was almost like the indispensable ingredients for the realization of the full potential of the black race. He said that Nigeria is more important than Nigerians, than Nigeria, in the sense that if we do not realize it, we are so important that our unity is so critical for the realization of the African dream that we dare not play with it. Next, you saw the remarkable admiration they showed for the role of Nigeria in the liberation of Africa, for the sacrifices we've made in blood, in treasure, for the leadership we have in the arts, our writers, our poets, our artists, Nollywood and the rest of it. And I think it's good because many times you hear people say that Nigerians have sacrificed a bit for Africans and they don't appreciate it. Yesterday there was a lot of appreciation.
Okay.
Sometimes also we get too self-critical. Yesterday we were told that Nigeria matters. In fact, what I took out of it was that if Nigeria did not exist, there would have been need to create a Nigeria. And I think it's important for us to bear that in mind. For the sake of our nation and our continent, if Nigeria did not exist, there would still have been need to create a Nigeria. Now, coming to your question on the promises they made in terms of intelligence and in terms of security, it is gratifying because a lot of the countries today that can be useful to us in containing terrorism around us are also countries that in years past we've gone out of our way